I hate to disappoint people, but there's no evidence that he actually chopped down the cherry tree. My name is Dr. Jared Frederick, Jared Frederick, and I am a teaching professor of history at Penn State Altoona. There's no shortage of apocryphal stories associated with George Washington, most famous among them chopping down the cherry tree at Ferry Farm along the Rappahannock River at Fredericksburg, Virginia. And really, a lot of these myths and fables about him start to originate shortly after he passes away, some even in his own lifetime, because people wanted him to embody this idea of being a virtuous Republican, that he's the ultimate citizen. He embodies all of these truths and all this dignity that we aspire to. And so it's not surprising that people would have that ambition to make him America's Superman. Despite George Washington having a very strict regimen in using tooth powder and mouthwash, as many people well know, he unfortunately suffered from tooth decay beginning at a very young age. He started to lose his teeth around age 24, and by age 57, he had lost almost all of his teeth and had multiple sets of dentures. One of the major myths about George Washington's teeth is that they were made out of wood. And in actuality, it was a mixture of other human teeth, including those of enslaved people, and also the likes of ivory and whatnot. And so it was a mixture of human, animal, and fabricated items that found its way in his mouth, and it led to a great degree of discomfort. But as a fun side note, you can see one of those sets of dentures on display today at George Washington's Mount Vernon. The often said joke about George Washington is that because he was usually the tallest man in the room, he was bound to end up leading something. And indeed, he towered above most people in the 18th century. Your average male was somewhere in the range of 5'8", 5'9", and so in some cases he's almost a full foot taller than your average citizen. And George Washington recognized that there was a degree of political and military power that went along with his physical stature. He was an excellent horseman, he was an excellent dancer, and he recognized that this was all about him exuding power wherever he went. Even in the decades before the American Revolution, as the French and Indian War was ongoing, George Washington aspired to be a British officer. He wanted to be part of that aristocratic class. And so there too is another element of George Washington's life that many people don't take into consideration. He wanted to be a British general. A primary reason that he wasn't able to formally enter the ranks of British military prestige is that he was spurned one too many times. He was denied the opportunity of advancement because those within that military hierarchy looked down upon him because he was a provincial. And a lot of that pent-up energy he will later use against them as the American Revolution is ongoing. The American Revolution lasted 8 years, and in those 8 years, George Washington spent approximately 4 days at home. So imagine that. Imagine being away from home for 8 solid years. One can hardly blame him for not wanting some time for himself. He had certainly earned it during the American Revolution. But he and so many others realized during the Constitutional Convention in 1787, and during his first term as president and his second term as president, that he was the only person who could unite the country in the manner that he did. And so it was a true act of selflessness on his part. And he denied himself the very well-earned retirement that he should have had, and he did so in the name of public good and service to this up-and-coming country. Following his presidency, George Washington lived the life of a gentleman farmer, which had long been his ambition. He had fulfilled his goal to lead men in battle and to earn his place in history, and after that, in his presidency, he wanted nothing more than to rest quietly along the banks of the Potomac River. I think one reason why we are still so intrigued by George Washington is because he's so mysterious an individual. He's very enigmatic. He did not often publicly show emotion or convey it as such. And so, for as well known and beloved as he is, there's a lot that we don't really know about his personality. And I think it's been the mission of historians, artists, and filmmakers to try to give him a little bit of humanity that we've otherwise been denied over the years. George Washington's many messages still endure because so many of the challenges that he confronted in the 18th century we still contend with to this day. One of George Washington's great fears was party faction, and that partisanship would have the capacity to tear the country that he created apart. And indeed, as we look at our own times, there's a lot that we can learn from George Washington in considering the dangers of political division.